A few minutes.
Okay.
So when I get up and do record, I'm gonna make a big noise.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live.
Is ready? All right, fantastic. So good morning, everybody. We'll go around real quick if you don't mind, and we'll just do some introductions. My name's Lisa Mestis. I'm an investigator for the Department of Revenue Liquor Enforcement Division. Thank you guys for having me up today. Sounds like you'll have lots of questions. Like I was explaining a little bit earlier, I put together, we have a seller server training that we present to licensees. We have some kind of different things for clerks and law enforcement. But so I put this whole thing together. If there's something that's not pertinent or it doesn't apply up here in Silverton, just let me know, we can skip through it. But otherwise, we'll go through all of the information. And if you guys have questions along the way, we'll keep it very informal. Please feel free to, let me know which questions are and we'll get those covered. If you just want to go around and that way I have a name with some faces.
I'm Nathan Baxter, Communications and Event Manager for the town.
Lee Edwards, I'm the hearing officer for the Liquor License Authority here in town.
Hi, I'm Shane Furman. I'm mayor, but I also have business in town with liquor license.
Okay.
I'm Julian Hood. I'm part of a nonprofit. And so I was just trying to figure that out.
Piece of it. Okay. We have a whole section on that.
I'm Matt Green. I'm the town clerk.
Okay.
I'm Melina Marks. I'm the deputy clerk.
I'm Emma Shafrick and I work with Silverton Mountain.
Okay.
I'm Gloria Pashberger. I'm the town administrator.
Awesome. And then
Evelyn Perino and a co-owner of Silverton Liquor.
okay.
Roy Perino.
All right. Okay.
Seen once, one of the local cops.
Yep. And they have met you before. Fantastic. So Nate, I'm going to have you being my clicker guy. We'll go through to the next one's fine. So just a little bit about our division. We are a state regulatory agency. We have 2 field offices, one in Colorado Springs and then one in Grand Junction. Our headquarters is in Lakewood. If you guys have not ever been onto our website, you can go on there. There's a lot of really good information in regards to, forms, enforcement, all the rules and the laws are all on there. Any kind of updates that our division gives or positions on things that are new coming out. We have a email list on there that you can go and get signed up for any type of notifications that the division sends out. You can give them, your information and you'll get those notifications pushed out to you. But it's a good website. They've did a lot of revamping of it in the last couple of years. So it's a lot more user friendly than it used to be. Go ahead, Pete. Those are the different things, again, that you can find on the website, our locations, the fee schedules, recently issued licenses. All of our enforcement information goes on there when we do, underage compliance check operations. We do note those now for liquor and tobacco. So all that information you can find on there. It's just a great deal of information. And then just a disclaimer, I don't think we have anybody here that needs the actual certified class, but we don't compete with private vendors. So we actually allow private vendors to come in to teach certified trainings. This is the same information, except for that we don't certify as a state investigator. So I don't think anybody's here for that though. So in Colorado, I'll go ahead one more. We are run on what is called a 3-tier system. First tier is going to be like your manufacturers, your importers. So when you think of any type of alcohol that you have, who would manufacture that, right? You know, Budweiser, Jack Daniels, do you guys have any breweries here in Silverton? Okay, so they would have a manufacturer's license. They're manufacturing that alcohol. That's the first tier of what the licensing system is here in Colorado. The second tier is your wholesaler. So that's going to be your distributors, who you get alcohol from, who's delivering it to your restaurants, to your liquor stores, to all the retail establishments. It's that middle piece. Some of the lines are kind of blurred these days, or they're getting blurrier with manufacturer, wholesale, and retail. Just because if you have a brewery here, they can manufacture alcohol. They can also get a license to self-distribute that alcohol, but then all of that goes to the retailer. So we would say that a liquor store is going to be our retailers. Restaurants, your gas stations, your bars, those are what we consider retail. That's where the alcohol is actually being sold to consumers. And I'll go through this, I think, in a little bit later, but when I'm talking about like a brewery or a distillery, they have the ability to have all 3 of these licenses. Usually, want to keep the tiers separate and distinct, right? To not have some kind of monopoly on those types of things. That's why we regulate it in 3 different sections. But like I said, you'll see those lines a little bit more blurred now that we have distilleries, breweries, those types of places have become really popular in Colorado, over the last decade or so. Go ahead. So for off-premise licenses, you'll hear this a lot today when we talk about off-premise. These are the different types of licenses that we have that are off-premise licenses. And this is where somebody's going to go to purchase alcohol and they're going to take that to go, right? They're going to consume that somewhere off that licensed premise. So your liquor stores, your liquor licensed drugstores, your fermented malt beverage or FMB. And then the on-off premise FMB licenses, that was a change back in 2008. That's limited and that's based on population, on whether or not you'd be able to issue one of those types of licenses. And then so for on-premise, that's where we're going to go consume alcohol on the premise, right? People are going to a restaurant, they're going to a bar, they're going to a hotel. It's where they're going to go and have an alcohol beverage and actually consume it there at that location. These are the different types of on-premise licenses that we have in the state. As you can see that there's a whole list of them. So these are all, Colorado is a dual licensing state. So these are all licenses that first get approved by a local authority. Okay, so everything goes through on these types of licenses, goes through the local authority first. Like when you renew your license or apply for your license, you do that through the town. The town will go through, make sure that it meets all the requirements of what you guys have in place. And then once you approve that, you'll send it to the state. And typically what happens at the state level is that if a town approves a license, there's really not a reason for us to not approve it. So if you guys look through it and you don't have, because you're the ones here, you're the ones in this town, you're the ones who are going to say what you do and you do not want as far as alcohol establishments go. If you approve that license and you send it on to the state, unless there's something statutorily wrong with it, the state would probably approve a license. But everything starts on the local level. And that also goes for, and we'll go into some of the paperwork here shortly, any type of modification or renewal or changes in ownership, all of those types of things start with at the local level and then they come to the state. Go ahead. There are other permits that are, get issued. Do you guys have any liquor licensed drugstores up here? I don't think you do.
You what?
A liquor licensed drugstore?
No.
Like you have to get permit manager permits and those types of things. But these are other things that are not considered licenses, but different types of permits that you guys are able to also issue. And again, it starts at the local level and then it goes to the state. If you want to go to the next slide. I think I took that one out, but so there are certain licenses that are state only issue, which means that the local authority doesn't issue those. So when we're talking about a manufacturer's license, a wholesaler's license, a distillery, a brewery, Those places are licensed only through the state of Colorado. Not to say that you guys don't have any choice in the matter of what's going to be in your community. There is a mandate that they noted or put a notice out to the local authority within 10 days of them putting in that application with the state. That way you guys have time to say, hey, you know what, this isn't something that we want in our community. And that's certainly something that we would look at, or to say, hey, we have no issues with it. You know, it's something that would be welcome here. But it's all so with that, the license is issued by the state. So any type of action taken against that license would only be taken by the state. So that's not something where administratively on a state only issued license where you would be able to take an action against that. You'd have to bring it through the state to take an action. There are people who are prohibited as licenses. Anyone who hasn't paid their fees, so new or renewal, right? You can't hold that license until you get your fees paid. Any person of not good moral character. And so what we do with good moral character is we do background checks. So anybody who's going to have 10% more financial interest in a liquor license, anybody who's going to be the registered owner or registered manager, or have any part of that license or part of in the company, we will do a fingerprint request for them to actually get their background. Let's see, and then any person under the age of 21, you have to be at least 21 to hold a license in Colorado. Go ahead. So when we talk about a licensed premise, this is going to be specifically what on your establishment where you want alcohol to be able to be sold, served, stored, consumed. So anywhere on that footprint that you're going to want alcohol to be in any facet with these things. We do have to get a detailed diagram when that application is turned in. I think if you go to the next one, this is kind of what it's going to look like. Okay. So like we've got, I'm sure you guys turned in a diagram of your liquor store, and that's showing anywhere on there that you want to serve or not serve in a liquor store, but to store alcohol, to sell alcohol, anywhere where that can be. And so these are important because basically when somebody comes in and applies for a license for us, they're going to give us this diagram and they're saying, this is the area that we want licensed. So this is going to be part of our license premise. And that's important, you know, for law enforcement to know when you're going into an establishment, maybe you're going into a bar and you've checked with the clerk and you've got the diagram and you go in and that whole outdoor patio isn't licensed, right? But we have a bunch of people out there consuming alcohol. Well, that's a problem because you can only consume, sell, store, any of that somewhere where it's licensed. So it's good to know that information, you know, good for licensees to know. It's not as big of an issue in, you know, a liquor store, but if you are working in a restaurant, you probably should know where you can and cannot serve alcohol, where you can and cannot store alcohol. So it's really good for employees to know what the licensed area is. You know, it's great for law enforcement to know as far as going in to conduct inspections or to look around, or, you know, if there's some type of issue, knowing whether or not you're on that licensed premise or that they're acting within the boundaries of where they're allowed to have alcohol. And all of these, like I said, when applicants or when licensees turn in their application for a liquor license, this is mandatory as part of that packet. So you guys will have this for every licensed establishment that you have here in Silverton. You know, if you go out and do inspections like as law enforcement and go and look at those things, make sure that maybe some modifications haven't happened that you weren't aware of, or people have expanded or, you know, shrunk their areas. Anytime that there's going to be an expansion or some type of physical change within a licensed premise, they do have to get permission, you know, through the town to do what's called a modification of premise first. And then with that, they would submit a new diagram, you know, make sure that it meets all of your, you know, zoning or schools or, you know, whatever it is that you guys have regulating, make sure it meets that, and then you would approve it.
Is this diagram also mandatory for special event like licenses?
Yes, yes, it is. Yep. So you got to know where the alcohol is going to be. And that's just a point of control, right? And we'll go into special event permits, but we certainly want to know where the alcohol is going to be, how it's going to be controlled. You know, it's not a free for all. When you have a special event, there are certain areas where those things are going to be held. Okay, go ahead. And this is just an example of our applications. And also this is what you would report changes on. So if there is any different you wanting a retail ware storehouse permit, or you need a manager's permit for a liquor licensed drugstore, or you're going to do a modification to your premise, this is where you would report that. This is the form. And it's a pretty thorough instruction sheet. You've got your boxes and then your instructions. Go ahead to the next one. You see it's like a 4 or 5 page form where you're just putting all of the information, the different blocks or for the different types of, you wouldn't fill out everything if you don't need a retail warehouse storage permit. We're gonna leave that section blank, right? But we see these most often with the modifications. If you're gonna do modifications, you can do a permanent modification where you're permanently gonna change your structure of your building. Maybe you're going to add a patio or, add an outdoor area or something, but they also allow what's called a temporary modification. So, and I could imagine that would be handy up here in the summertime. I'm sure it's really nice outside where maybe you want to extend your premise so that way in the summertime, people can come and have more space. And in that case, you would just give us dates. Like I want to do this from June 1st until, August 31st, whatever the case may be. So those types of things this is the form that you would get it on. Again, you can go onto our website. I don't know if the clerk's office, if you guys have those forms available for licensees, but if not, you can go onto any of the forms that we have, you can go onto the website and get those printed off. And they are also on there by either DR 8542 by the number or by the name. I don't know any of the numbers by heart, so I always have to look them up by name, but you can go on either way and search those. Go ahead. All right, so a registered manager. So each of these licenses that you have listed here has to have a registered manager. Okay, and so what's meant by that is that you have to have somebody who is going to be essentially named as like being in charge of that establishment. A registered manager does have to go through a background check, so they would go and get fingerprints taken. They have to be separate and distinct from any other establishment, so you can't have more than one registered manager per license. So you couldn't have.
Can the owner of a business be the registered manager?
owner
Or does it have to be a separate person?
The owner of the business can be. If they want to designate themselves to be the registered manager, they absolutely can. With registered managers, within 30 days, if there is a change, if you get somebody new or you have somebody leaving, you have to notify the local authority in the state of that. Best case scenario, I know a lot of time, especially in smaller towns, it's probably hard with workforce and getting people to come up into work. If you can't get them replaced within 30 days, that's not such an issue, but you do need to report that, if somebody has left. So, and then that gets updated in our system as well. That's licensees reporting to you guys.
And you were saying that the manager can't be the same person for multiple businesses?
Correct. You can't be a registered manager on more. That's separate and distinct.
Okay.
So you could be, you can work at multiple places and that's fine, but just you can only be registered at one of those.
Okay.
Basically it's saying that you're part of that liquor license, for whatever establishment that you're at, because you're going to go through and you're going to get the fingerprints done. And then you're the acting manager for that establishment.
And can establishments have multiple registered managers or just one manager per one establishment?
I don't know anything that would prohibit them from having multiple registered managers if they want to go through the process with, multiple people to do that. Yeah, that's fine. And usually on your form, I guess you would just submit one. There's space for one registered manager, but you could put in as many as you needed to.
Okay.
All right.
Good to have a backup plan, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead with the next one. Any changes of an ownership or management do have to be reported within 30 days. And again, this is just another box on that form. It's got to be reported to the local and state licensing authority for on-premise licensees. And then that's just going to be, if it's ownership, like a corporate structure change, a lot of times you're going to do transfers of ownership with that. You're not going to do a report of change because they're doing actually a full change but you might have someone come in where, they have a new business partner or someone new that's going to be a new owning partner where that does need to be reported. So basically anybody with financial interest in a liquor license has to be reported as part of that license. Anybody with 10% interest or more financially has to be reported, but there's also a caveat in there that anybody that's going to have any type of ownership So if they're making money off of that business or they're contributing money somehow, or they have some type of control, then it needs to be reported. Go ahead. All right, so the role of the local licensing authorities, and I kind of copied and pics from some different PowerPoints that we have. So that's why this is different. But you guys, it sounds like have a hearing officer, so you do your own hearings. The county can do it, the county commissioners. There's approximately 330 different jurisdictions in Colorado. All of those jurisdictions and a lot of places that are smaller don't necessarily have a council or a hearing board. So it's nice that you guys have that. But all of local authorities have the ability to deny, issue, suspend or revoke a license. So at the local level, you guys have the administrative authority to take action against a liquor license. It's a dual licensing state, right? And so what typically happens with that is if something happens on a licensed premise that rises to the level of an administrative action, if you guys are going to handle that, then the state won't. We certainly could, because they're separate licenses. They have a local license through the town of Silverton and then a state of Colorado license. But we typically, our stance has been, if you guys are going to take an action, some kind of fine or some kind of suspension, then we'll allow the locals just to handle that. If it were, and we do this for a lot of smaller agencies where you don't want to do the administrative action, or you just don't have, the manpower or the time or whatever comes up, we can take the administrative action on your behalf. Usually this is going to probably come through some kind of, local law enforcement, something that they've seen as far as a violation on the licensed premise, where you would just, get your report to the clerk or straight to us, and we would look at that and we would do the administrative action. But you guys certainly have just as much authority in regards to administrative powers that the state does. So you can do all of the same things that we do. For all the retail licenses, you guys are, like I said, they come through you first. Everything goes through the local licensing authority first, as far as issuing those and then renewing them and maintaining the permits. So as far as your community standards, this is going to be when somebody is getting a new license, you're doing the reasonable requirements of your neighborhood, the public's needs and desires, different ordinances or resolutions that you might have that might prohibit certain licenses from being in certain places or certain licenses from being here. I don't know if you guys have anything like that. And then applicant character issues, again, with that background, they'll go through that background and then you guys will make that determination. Also for local issues, if you have maybe somebody that's had a bar or they've had a license, or you have somebody that's, continuing problem, those are things that you look at too with character issues. You won't know of someone or something that's going to be an issue for you in the town, especially at the size that you guys have your town. Probably don't want to welcome in any kind of unfit characters to come and have licenses here, but those are the things you'll look at. And then as far as enforcement goes, you have your local law enforcement, and they have, again, the same authority that we have as state peace officers to go in, to do the inspections, to do checks, to do, bar checks, all of those types of things, and to take this action that we can as far as administrating enforcements, criminally if need be. So they have the same authority that we have.
We do have a question from Sheriff Conrad.
Yes, yep, go ahead.
Hey, Lisa, Sheriff Conrad, thank you. I wanted to back up a little bit to the dual licensing authority concepts. Just to clarify, the local licensing authority has the ability to create additional ordinances, if you will, or additional rules over and above the states, correct?
Correct. Yep. So if you, by resolution or ordinance, if that's something that you do as a town, but specifically in an administrative situation, the local authority does have the ability to put something more restrictive or, more conditions on issuing a license.
I want to make a clarification.
That was my follow-up question was, so how do you typically see that occur within the local authorities? Do you see that being a resolution or an ordinance, or how does that typically come about?
The only town I can think of that has something blanketed, like for all their like Rifle. I don't know if you guys know this, the city of Rifle. I don't know if they still have this in place. I believe it was a resolution that they had, but it was after 10 PM. No one under 18 could be in any liquor license establishment. So that's not a state law. There's no law that says that, but they put that as part of their mandate with issuing licenses, is that at 10 PM, anyone under the age of 21 had to leave.
I want to make something clear. The license authority doesn't make the law. It administers the law. It's the town of Silverton
Mhm.
that makes those
It would have to come up with the
resolutions.
exactly.
I just want to make that clear.
And so when we're talking about being more restrictive or condition wise, I've seen this, so I came from the city of Grand Junction before I was with the state, and they do a lot of their own hearings where they can do, you say you have some type of administrative violation where you could put other conditions into place on that license and not necessarily, a law or resolution, anything. It's not affecting everybody, but it would be affecting that licensee as part of an administrative function where you could put something more into place.
Quick question on the temporary permits there. Would that include something like, say, a liquor license establishment turned in their licensing application a little bit too late, but they're approved locally. They're just waiting on the state to do their thing. So, the wholesalers say, hey, can we get a temporary permit? Is that kind of that situation?
No, so they're trying to just make sure that they have a valid license to deliver to them. And so what happens with that, because I know the state is behind, is that once they turn in a renewal and their fees to the local license agency, then they're considered good. So while they're waiting on us, they are still able to function and to perform unless there was something that we were to find. And again, if you guys approve that, we approve it, but that license is considered good as soon as they turn it into you and that the fees are paid. So again, when we looked at people who we don't license, if the fees aren't paid, that's something where we would not say that that's valid. But yeah, as soon as it comes to you, renewal and fees are paid, they're good to operate until the state catches up and gets that license.
So should the local license be issued immediately after approval at the hearing or until the state sends their license and approval?
Typically, they issue them together. So when we send ours to the clerk or to you guys, then you would just send those out together.
Okay.
But they are okay to operate.
Okay.
In the interim. And so when we talk about, there's different kinds of permits, if you do a transfer of ownership, you would do a temporary permit that's good for, up to 180 days that they can operate off of while that new license is being processed because they don't actually have that license yet. And so that's an instance where we would do a temporary permit, or you guys would issue that temporary permit. And that's the only thing I can think of a time where you would actually do a permit like that.
Okay.
Otherwise, if they already have a current license and they turn in that renewal, then they're good to operate until the state gets, to that application.
Yeah, so one of the things that's come up is people have said that it doesn't appear that somebody's current on the website, but it's not the website that they need to check with. It's with the clerk and myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are going to be the very most accurate because that website can only be as good as whoever's updating it.
And it's been behind quite a bit at some time.
Yeah, I know, for the whole state, there's over 20,000 licenses, and I think we have 8 gals over there.
I get it. I almost wish they didn't keep it because.
Yeah, it does cause confusion when it's updated correctly. But yeah, no, they should always go to you guys, because again, you're gonna have the most, you're gonna know who's turned in their application and who's, whose fees you've got, and opposed to a website where that might be sitting on somebody's desk, in Lakewood, and they just haven't had time to update that yet. So yeah, they should always come through the local first.
Yeah, we've had some sellers wholesale or deliver, I guess it'd be
Distributors.
Basically go to that site and tell
Yeah,
people that they cannot get.
alcohol.
Because they check the website and they say you
They check,
liquor license and then they come in here.
it's a problem.
Okay.
Might want to let,
Yeah, absolutely.
there may be a caveat on there, check with the local authority because it
Sure.
caused a lot of.
That's a really good suggestion.
The way we've addressed that is we've issued regular notices from town that they're licensed.
They're current.
And they're current, and that's fine. We're fine to do it, but I can't imagine that this isn't happening all over.
Yeah, I will definitely bring that up. Thank you. Yeah, that's good information to know. All right, so again, the role of our licensing authority, we don't duplicate local authority processes. We do the background investigations, we do inspections. Again, we also have the power to deny, issue, suspend, or revoke any type of license or permit. And then the rulemaking that goes into, legislative sessions. And that's above where I'm at, but that's what our role is. As far as renewals go, so speaking of those, the state will notify 90 days before that license expires. And we're doing a lot of those. It used to be by mail. A lot of those are going out now by email. And so when we have licensees that say they never received a notification, then it's got to be something with their address, because we go with whatever the most current address was on a application or a renewal. Those are updated automatically in our system, because these, I believe, are kicked out. It's automated. So if we have that situation, it's got to be something where an address was updated, and then either they just didn't notify, the locals, and then they get to the state, and that's why they wouldn't get the renewal. But we do a notification 90 days ahead of time, 45 days ahead of time. We have, we like licensees to submit applications to the local authority, and it's so far in advance ahead of time, because a lot of times if you guys have to hold your hearing, I don't know how you guys do that process, but then it's got to come to the state. And then, that gives it time to be processed, so that by the time that license is ready to be renewed, hopefully there's not too much of a lag between their expiration and when it actually got renewed. Within 30 days, the local clerk forwards to the state authority. You can accept renewals outside of the 30-45 dates for good cause. And it sounds like a lot of times maybe that happens where they're turning it in after the fact. If a license has expired and it's been less than 90 days, they can pay the late filing fee. Once they turn in that renewal, the late filing fee, and then their regular fees, they're considered to be in good standing again. Okay, so they can come into you with that. Between 91 and 180 days, this actually got changed probably 5 or 6 years ago. It used to be at 90 days. If they hadn't renewed, the license was null and void. It was expired, right? They had to apply for a whole new license. So the law changed about 5 or 6 years ago that actually extended that. So now they have up to 180 days to get that renewal into you. There are penalties that go with that, as far as there is a $25 a day renewal fee every day after 91 days, up to 180 days. And then that $500 fee to the local and the state agency. Local agencies can waive that if they want to. The state does not. So that does have to be collected. Anything after 180 days is considered just an expired license. You have to reapply for a brand new liquor license if you don't turn in your renewal before that 180-day mark.
So we had an issue with this where the state had changed the cost and it wasn't on the form that was on the website.
Okay.
And so there are a bunch of people sitting there and an eddy, if you will, going in circles, and they were waiting to hear back from the state.
Okay.
And they didn't know because they didn't pay the extra $10 or whatever it was.
Okay. And that's on our form? It doesn't state?
Yeah, I don't know what the form says now, but the form that the state changed the amount. People send, it wasn't on the form that was on the website download.
Like an additional $50 application fee payable.
Yeah,
to the state.
So $10, I think it was. Is that the amount?
I think it was either 10 or 50. It was
50?
It was a pretty small amount. It was only.
It was caught and they were all sitting and waiting, and the issue was that they didn't pay enough. Well, they paid what was on the form that was on the website.
Okay. And we'll check, and that's for the renewal form? Look, I know that they've the forms.
Yeah.
Audit group that have been going, trying to find.
It's not just with this agency. It's interesting. There's a lot of agencies that there's a lot of laws that change and they leave the old stuff. And
yeah,
that's understandable, except unless it's punishing the people because they were using the form.
Yeah, exactly. I'll look into that as well, because I know that they've gone through revamping a lot of, or they're trying to go through all the forms just to catch those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And also, is there a new fee schedule published like yearly with a yearly date? Because I've often been finding only the 2020 fee schedule.
So unless there's any change in fees, it'll stay the same.
Okay.
So, typically, if there is, again, get on with those emails. Sometimes fees are dropped just based on whatever, the state has collected in, or if it's a short year, they're gonna raise license fees. And so that's the only time that you'll see it updated is when a new fee comes out. So if fees haven't changed since 2021, then that's what's gonna be on there until there's an update either way.
Okay.
So, yeah, they don't do it, annual or anything, just when an increase or decrease would happen. There's always a notification about that if fees are gonna go up or we're gonna cut fees. So,
Okay.
yep. So whatever was up there last, that's the last time we've changed them. All right. Okay, so brew pubs, do you guys have any of these types of licenses? A brew pub, distillery pub, or vintner's restaurant? Or you just have a brewery?
We have, I think the vintner's licenses at the Dalavala.
Are they producing wine? They're making.
No, not actually.
No, what's the license for when they just serve for free?
There's just like a,
No, that's a vintner's restaurant. I got it.
So basically, we can go over these real quick. What these licenses are is kind of like our hybrid licenses where, we have the people that sell off and people who sell on. And both of these are allowed, or all three of these are allowed to do both. Okay, so they can sell wine, beer, spirits of their own manufacture in closed containers for off-premise consumption. So they can sell, stuff.
So we have the distillery pub.
You do have this, okay.
Yep.
Then they're also allowed to sell malt, finest or spirituous alcohol of others for on-premise consumption.
Yeah, brew pub as well.
Okay, so there, it's kind of like a hybrid type of license. The distillery pub, that's something that's pretty new within the last couple of years. So again, so they've got kind of the best of both worlds where they're manufacturing their own alcohol, allowed to sell that, for purchase off, but then they can also sell everybody else's on site at their establishment. So. Go ahead. Lodging and entertainment licenses. This license is also pretty new within the last, that's 6 years now. Time goes by pretty quick. But so what we would see happen is a lot of people were getting tavern licenses, but they didn't necessarily meet the definition of a tavern, but there wasn't any other license that fit them. So we have like places, lodging or entertainment where they're doing sports or entertainment type of activities. So they weren't necessarily like a bar, so to speak. I want to say like nail salons, they were getting tavern licenses, and I want to say like those axe throwing places, those are a big thing now, right? Where you do that. That's not necessarily like a tavern, but they didn't have any other license that fits. So 6 years ago, they created this lodging and entertainment license to be more functional to those types of places that are providing just lodging or entertainment, or maybe they're doing both. And so they actually stopped issuing tavern licenses to these types of places unless they fit the definition for an actual tavern. So I don't know if you guys have any of those up here. But that's a new license that we have. You guys.
A few of those, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this would be a good community for it, especially with the lodging piece. You have a lot of places where they just want a license, to do a happy hour, from 4 to 6 for their guests, or, those types of things where they're not necessarily a tavern, but they want to have alcohol available. So this is a newer license.
There's been some questions about the operations of a lodging and entertainment license where it creates a little gray area for enforcement.
Okay.
Because guests of a hotel who are over 21 are allowed to bring their own off-premises alcohol to consume. And then the question is.
Consume in their rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can't consume it in the license space,
Right.
but correct.
The question is, to what extent can those guests, like, is the premises responsible for monitoring those guests for being adequate age, not having open containers off site and things like that?
So, I mean, if they're bringing something into their private room, they wouldn't have any more responsibility than, because your hotel room would be considered like your residence.
Right.
So, I mean, they don't have responsibility what's occurring in there, but they do have responsibility for watching that premise, where if they were trying to bring drinks, their own drinks onto a licensed premise, they need to control that. Certainly with age and serving to intox, those types of things, yes, they're gonna look for those types of things with people on their licensed premise. But yeah, as far as what you're taking into your private room, that's considered private, so they wouldn't be responsible for what happens inside that room.
Lisa, can I ask a follow-up question, Sheriff Conrad?
Yeah,
Thank you for clarifying that. That's been a bone of contention here. And can we also clarify the difference perhaps between a special event in this type of license as opposed to normal operation? As far as the liquor license facility, the diagram, the needs of the operator to maintain their liquor license doesn't change whether they're having a special event there or they're having regular business operations, or it's a wedding or what have you. If they have a liquor license, then they have the same duties and responsibilities to that license.
correct. A liquor license, the rules and the regulations that apply to a liquor license apply at all times. So 24/7, 365, regardless of what the event or function is, the liquor laws always take precedence.
And just another follow-up, a lot of times an establishment will try and claim that they're having a private party. When you have a liquor license, there's no such thing as a private party necessarily. And it doesn't prohibit enforcement agencies from entering and inspecting the property whenever there is, as the statute quotes, activity. Can you
Correct, yeah, so establishments can host a private party, but again, and I think we'll go over that here in just a little while, the liquor laws take precedence over that. So if it's private, you're shutting down for a wedding, or you're having your family in, or whatever the case, you still have to, that licensed premise is governed by the liquor code. And so that takes precedence regardless of whether you're saying it's private or public. All right.
And one more follow-up. I'm sorry, I've got
No,
a ton
go
of
ahead.
questions written down here. I appreciate you being here. So we have another establishment that used to have a license and now does not. It is a hotel situation that has a common area. And there's a little bit of gray area here where they now don't have a license, and that's fine with me. We've been operating under the understanding that they're allowing their guests to come into their private rooms and consume alcohol there. There is, however, some public area there that the gray area is that the owner is saying that only registered guests are allowed in that area, and that's fine. If that's the way they want to operate, that works for me. If that works for you guys, but then the issue we have is that then we'll have a wedding, or we'll have an event, we'll have an after hours band after a big event in town. That no longer becomes a private entrance area, and I think that the issue we're coming across is that then we have folks that are there violating the law. However, we don't want to go in and write all the individuals for open container. That makes no sense. We want the business owner to be responsible for their space, but there's no real way to, I don't understand what to write them for that. They're allowing open container and open consumption in a area that is now open to the public. Again, it seems like we have no teeth there, and that we can't stop the business owner from doing that. Our only recourse is to go in and write every individual for open container, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because we don't regulate non-licensed establishments, so that is the only, the public consumption law would be the only thing you would have to fall back on there, because we don't have any regulatory authority over someone that doesn't have a liquor license.
So can you clarify? So if there's in the hallways of a hotel and people are going from one room to another and they're drinking their own alcohol, that's not a licensed area
Okay.
for the consumption of alcohol with the, are you saying that that's against the law inside of a private hotel?
Yeah, it's still a public space.
So
Public consumption law.
So a private hotel is a inside the building.
I don't think you can.
Public space under the law?
Yeah, that would be considered public space, right?
So I think the
hallway
gray
in a
area,
hotel.
the gray area here, as I'm seeing it, is that the establishment owner is saying that they're only allowing their registered guests within the hotel lobby. And if that's the case, that's fine with me. That works with me. But where we get gray is when we have a special event and it becomes a much bigger event. Obviously, people who aren't staying at the hotel are there and consuming alcohol. That's.
So do they have a special event license that they're pulling when you have a
Nope.
special event?
No, it's just, whether they're having a wedding there, then there's people staying in other hotels that are coming to come to the wedding, come to the band, come to the party. And it's not just folks that are registered hotel guests, and that's where I have issue, but it's a difficult thing to enforce.
It is.
So I'm just wanting to make sure, I think we're talking about two different things right now, though they intertwine. Are we saying that people cannot have alcohol that they bring to a space, or a business can't have alcohol in their space?
Not in a public space, you cannot.
In a private building?
If you're gonna have a private function, so like say,
No, I'm not talking about a function. I'm talking about when I go to my hotel room, I can't have alcohol.
you could, it's just not out in public, you can.
I can't go across the hall.
I mean, we're kind of getting into the weeds with that. I'm never going to be walking through a hall and be like, oh my gosh, stop. But no,
Well, that's the same.
technically,
But
by the law,
But that's the same of what the sheriff's talking about right now, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff Conrad, saying that there's a private hotel, people are going to the private hotel and they're meeting in a common area and they're bringing their own cocktails and your issue that you're saying is with that they are not allowed to bring in people from the outside. But what I'm hearing from the liquor authority right now is that they're advising that if somebody's in a common lobby area and that not a licensed facility, but if people are bringing their own alcohol into that public area, they are out of compliance.
correct.
I think that's true in general.
Statute for public consumption. No, there's no,
Right.
unless there's something in Silverton that you guys have adopted by resolution or ordinance where you allow that, there's no state law that allows public consumption.
I've received written
Yeah,
guidance.
Anthony, I think you've nailed it as far as the statute itself. Where it becomes gray for me is that the owner of the establishment is simply saying that my whole hotel is private. It's for our guests only. So by his view, it's not now open to the public, and his guests can there sit in the lobby, not just in their hotel room. They can be in the common spaces in the lobby and consume alcohol that they've brought there. And again, I'm not necessarily having issue with that for his hotel guests in their own lobby. That's fine with me. That hasn't been an issue. The issue is when it busts open into an open event in the public, and then we're in that area that's not great for me. I have issue with that. It's just really difficult to enforce. I think we're gonna have to go about it by the town looking at the business license, because we're getting noise complaints, we're getting all kinds of issues that stem from that. So I think that we need to go about that through looking at the business license rather than the liquor license.
Talking about like 3 or 4 different issues right now.
Right.
I'm gonna go back to something you said before about a liquor license premises within the common area that they're permitted to serve the public.
Yep.
That is also a hotel that has a lodging and entertainment license. You said that a hotel guest couldn't bring their own alcohol into the portion of the licensed premise where, so I've received written guidance from the state that contradicts that says a guest is allowed to have their own alcohol anywhere on the premises, as long as they're over 21, but a non-guest can only consume alcohol provided through that liquor license service. And we have like an email from the state saying that.
Okay.
That was a big question when we opened our hotel, because we have, a common area outside, we have a bar space inside, we have a dining room. And so guests that are coming as groups, they bring their own wine, to tell them that they can't consume that somewhere on the premises. We're like, well, what do we do about that? And if the answer is no, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
We have written.
I can look into it
Because the answer is not.
further, but I'm not aware of any exception to bring your own alcohol on a licensed space. I'm not aware of it.
We'll follow whatever rules.
Yeah, no, and as I can look into, I don't know if there's something specifically that was for lodging and entertainment, but I'm not aware of any exception to bringing your own alcohol onto a licensed space for any license.
Okay.
Well, you can bring your own bottle of wine to a restaurant and you can pay a corking fee. That's
No, you cannot.
not in Colorado.
Not in Colorado.
Interesting.
You
Okay.
should absolutely not do that.
Interesting.
And we'll go through that specifically, but no, that's 100% prohibited.
Really
Mhm.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I've never done it in Colorado, but I thought that
Not in Colorado.
Arkansas, you can absolutely do that.
Is that something the municipality can change, or is that by state statute? And then we can't be more lenient without.
You can be more lenient to what the law allows. So you can be more strict or prohibitive to that. You know, with all the stuff that came through with COVID, you can, like I said, you can create, and with the public consumption law, because it's prohibited through the state, but you can come up with a resolution or ordinance where, hey, in like our city parks, we allow whatever type of alcohol beverage to be consumed, or, you know, if we have a ballpark, we'll allow that there, or in the common spaces, you know, X, Y, and Z will allow that. And we've seen that in a lot of, you know, in the villages, like in Vale, they allow public consumption in
Really did that.
like Glenwood, they like allow beer and wine in the parks. And, you know, so they've created those spaces where it is allowed to be publicly consumed. But that's something that you guys would have to create by either, you know, resolution or ordinance to allow it, and then specifically to what space. But yeah, no, there is no public consumption, and there's, like I said, there's no exemption that I'm aware of where you can bring your own alcohol onto a licensed premise. So, but I'll look into that one further for you.
Thank you.
Right, go ahead. All right, so on-premise licensees. So again, when we talk about on-premise, this is where you're going there to consume alcohol. They sell alcohol by the drink for on-premise consumption to consume at the site. All on-premise licenses have to have sandwiches and light snacks available during business hours or after 8 p.m. if full meals are required. All alcohol beverages have to be purchased from manufacturers and wholesalers. There is an exception for on-premise establishments that they can purchase up to $2,000 per calendar year from a retail liquor store or a liquor licensed drugstore. And so this would be, you know, it's Saturday night, your wholesaler obviously isn't going to be up in Silverton making deliveries, and you run out of, you know, whatever it is that everyone's wanting to drink that night. You could run over to the liquor store and pick up, you know, a case of beer or, you know, bottle of whiskey or whatever it is that you need. There's a $2,000 allotment within a year to do that. If a licensee chooses to do so, though, they do have to retain evidence of that purchase with the receipt. The receipt does have to have the date of purchase, the location of the purchase, and a description of the alcohol product purchased and what was paid. Okay. Age requirements. So for your FMB or your for malt beverages, so it's going to be like your gas stations, or if you have a little grocery store here, that's probably what they're selling. Retail liquor store and your liquor licensed drugstores. Employees can be 18 years of age or older, participate in the sale or service of alcohol at these establishments. If they deliver, they do have to be 21 years old. So any person delivering has to be 21, and there's no supervision required for these employees. If you have an 18-year-old clerk in your liquor store, there's nothing that says that there has to be someone there older to supervise that. That is different for on-premise. They can be 18 years of age or older, but they do have to be under the direct supervision of somebody who's at least 21 years of age. Okay, so in a bar or tavern or restaurant or hotel, if you're going to have your servers be 18 years of age, you have to have someone there to supervise them. They can participate in the full gamut of serving as far as checking the ID, making the drink, serving it, and that's fine. But again, there has to be somebody there that's at least 21 to supervise that. 21 years of age or more to handle or serve alcohol beverages in taverns and lodging and entertainment that don't regularly serve meals. So if you've got a spot that's like your true bar, you only are required to do the snacks and sandwiches. You cannot have people underage serving.
For the 21 years of age to deliver, are we talking delivering things off of site, or is this just delivering to the table?
Nope. So that's for your liquor stores, your gas station, grocery stores and drug stores.
Okay.
They have, well, you can get a delivery permit where if I call Joe's Liquor down the street, and if they have that permit and I want them to deliver it to me, the delivery driver has to be 21.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then, so that's for your off premise, and then your on premise, they can participate in the full gamut of it.
And is that a delivery permit by statute, or is that something that each town has to individually?
That's by statute. So there is a delivery permit for all of the off premise. That's been in existence for a long time. With the update in the COVID rules where you can do takeout and delivery, that is a new permit. So if there's an on premise establishment that wants to deliver, they have to get the permit.
Okay.
All right. Special event holders, at least 18 years of age. Again, they have to have that direct supervision of somebody who's at least 21 years of age. Wholesale and manufacturers, if you guys have the one brewery here, they can be 18 to work in there, but they have to be 21 to sell alcohol beverages, to check IDs, all of that. But they can have 18-year-old employees if they want them, working in the back or cleaning the tables or whatever that case may be, but they have to be 21 to sell alcohol. And so our hours of service, I don't know how late you guys go up here in Silverton, but for all of your off-premise licenses, that's always going to be 8 a.m. to midnight. This is every day except for Christmas. Daylight savings doesn't matter because when you're closed at midnight, 2 o'clock never comes, right? So midnight for all of your off-premise establishments, and that's again every day except for Christmas. Go.
1 day per
There's a religious problem.
And
shut down.
they have to be shut down. That goes all the way back to like the days of like the blue laws. For a long time, liquor stores weren't open on Sundays. So that just changed in the length of my career. I don't want to say how long I've been doing this, but that used to be a law. So yeah, every day except for Christmas. And that actually changed when we got rid of 3-2 beer in the state and we went to full strength, because you used to be able to buy 3-2 beer on Christmas Day. Like a lot of people need that, right? You have family and it's stressful. And now you better get your beer the day before, because once they switched to full strength, that went away as well. So they matched what liquor stores do, and there's no sales on Christmas Day.
Not sure that's constitutional, but I'll leave it.
So for your on and off premise establishments, so like I said, the hybrids that we were talking about, the brew pubs, the distillery pubs, and the vintners restaurant, they live by both worlds as far as like the on and off go. They can serve daily from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. and that's on premise. They can be open every day of the year. But for their off premise sales, they can only do that between 8 a.m. and midnight. They follow the same rules as an off premise establishment. So they kind of live on both sides of that, but they, have that flexibility to do it. So. All right, so food service requirements. These are some definitions that we have in regards to food service, right? So a hotel and restaurant license is required to sell full meals, as is a brew pub and a distillery pub. So when we look at full meals, right, that's different than sandwiches. When we think of sandwiches or light snacks, we think of, some kind of food of substance for a sandwich, right? It could be chicken wings, it could be some nachos, it could be a frozen pizza or a hot dog, a light snacks, your pretzels, your popcorn, your, nuts, those kinds of things. Those are required in your on-premise establishments. Again, your full meals are going to be your hotel and restaurant license. That is part of obtaining a hotel and restaurant licenses, is you're going to present yourself as an actual restaurant. It is a little bit easier of a license to get than say a tavern, right? If I say I'm going to bring in this nice family restaurant, we're going to be serving meals, opposed to I'm going to bring in this loud bar that's going to keep everybody up and keep everyone busy at 2 p.m. A little easier to get that, right, with your needs and desires. So they do require full meals. So that's going to be something that you would sit down to sit at and have a meal. Is going to have multiple components opposed to just your something of substance. And that's for your hotel restaurant. Again, if they are open between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., they have to have full meals available. So you couldn't go into someone licensed as a hotel and restaurant license at 3 p.m. and they don't have any food for you. Meals and light snacks or sandwiches have to be in place after 8 p.m. until they close. And for a hotel and restaurant license, they have to derive at least 25% of their gross income from the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages. All of your other on-premise establishments have to have sandwiches and light snacks available during all open business hours. So I don't know if you have places that stay open late here, but if you go in somewhere at 1 o'clock in the morning and they're open, they have to have something available. So they can't just say, nope, the kitchen's closed, we have no food. That does not cut it. And food service or, lack of food service is actually something we take pretty seriously, right? You have people drinking. What does food do when you're consuming alcohol? Soaks it
Slows
up,
it down.
right? It slows down. When you're consuming that, you need to have something to help. So with food service issues, we do take that really seriously. In fact, that people need to have something of substance available at all business hours or when they're open. Go ahead. So club licenses don't have an actual food service requirement, and neither do optional premises. Fermented malt beverages license issued for on-premise after June of 2018 have to derive 20% of their gross annual sales from food. Again, your brew pubs, your vintners, and all of your hybrids, they do have to have meals available. And then their food sales have to equal at least 15% of the gross income from the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages. So hotel and restaurants have to have a functioning kitchen and adequate food supplies. There is a condition where they can supplement but not replace. So if you have somewhere where you don't want to keep your whole kitchen open right all night long, and maybe you can pair up with a food truck or the pizza place next door, you can supplement that, but it's still going to be that establishment's responsibility where they can't say, hey, we don't have any food available. If you want to go across the street to the burrito truck, you'll be fine. They actually have to be able to find a way to provide that, whether that be, they get a number and they bring it into them, but they can supplement it, but not replace it. Okay. And again, source of alcohol beverages, everything has to come from a manufacturer or a wholesaler. Retail licenses for on-premise they have that $2,000 allowance. You do have to retain all business records for current year, plus 3 tax years back. And I think the tax man requires a little bit longer than that. So you're safe if you're doing it for that purpose. And then they have to retain retail purchases for all purchases that they've made outside of a wholesale manufacturer as well. All right, so here's the delivery that we were talking about. This is going to be for your retail liquor stores, your liquor licensed drugstores, and your F&B off. So there are no third-party deliveries allowed in Colorado. If those establishments are going to deliver, it has to be by an employee of that establishment. I don't know what you guys have for delivery up here, but in some of our bigger cities where they have like DoorDash or Uber Eats or those kinds of things, they cannot go do that. You cannot use a third-party delivery company. When they deliver, they do have to have a log. They have to verify, what time, where they're at, and the license or name of the person and date of birth that they deliver to. Under no circumstances would we allow delivery of alcohol to be made to someone under the age of 21. Let's see. And you can take the order, online, on the phone. A lot of places have websites now, so you can do that. There does need to be something in place that requires a name and a date of birth. So if you're doing it like an online platform or they're calling, that's the information that you would get upon taking that order. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so yeah, just the permit that they have to have. And again, no use of common carriers for retail deliveries. You can't have your UPS man picking up for you and delivering them. It's gotta be somebody who is employed with your establishment, and they've got to be, again, 21 years of age or older. Go ahead. Let me get into the unlawful acts. I think that we'll start maybe with we'll see when we go to the next one. In the statute, if you look, it's basically every verb you can think of, right? Sell, serve, give away, dispose of, exchange, deliver, or permit the selling, serving, or procuring of alcohol to any person visibly intoxicated or to a known habitual drunkard. And then there's the exact same statute for any person under the age of 21, right? So basically we want to make sure that we are preventing people under the age of 21 or somebody who's visibly intoxicated from continuing to get more alcohol. Go ahead to the next one. And you can click through all of these if you want. So we do compliance checks. We do these on a state level. A lot of local agencies do them at a local level. These have been found to be a really effective way to measure compliance. These are done throughout the entire nation. Every ABC or liquor enforcement, division that I am aware of does these to measure compliance. Like I said, a lot of local agencies do them as well. You even have sometimes some nonprofits that get grants to go in and actually do these types of things to measure compliance. A lot of people are like, well, that's entrapment. So entrapment would be essentially tricking somebody into doing something that they wouldn't normally have done, right? So when we do compliance checks, it's the statutory requirement of off-premise establishments to physically check an ID, right? And then for on-premise establishments, it's their statutory requirement to not sell to somebody who's under the age of 21. So when we send somebody in, we're not having them do anything outside of what their normal duty should be. It's the responsibility to check an ID. The kids that we employ, they're going to be 15 to 20 years of age. We take kids how they come. So a lot of times we get kids that look really young, they're 15 and they look 15, or we get, an 18-year-old that maybe looks like they're 25. We take them how they come. The law says 50 and under an ID has to be checked. I would find it hard to argue that any 20-year-old that we've ever had looks 50. So, we do these to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing in the regard to checking IDs. When they don't, or when there's no questions asked, it's a really good reminder for those establishments that, hey, there are underage people out here. When we come through, right, it's usually an enforcement action and an administrative action. But what we like to tell them is, this is the one time we came through. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of tourists. There's a lot of kids that are trying to get away with this stuff. And it's not us. And for one of them to get into your establishment, if you're not doing a good job checking IDs, and maybe they, get alcohol or consume alcohol and go out and cause some kind of tragedy or disturbance, that's when they're really looking at huge liability, right? So these are good checks to do, and it's good reminders. We never like to see anybody not pass them. But if they don't, it is a good reminder of the fact that, you are selling an age-regulated product, and you have to make sure that you're not selling that or getting it into the hands of someone who's not old enough to purchase it. Our violations result in a summons and then an administrative action against the establishment. So how do people underage get alcohol? Right? How'd you guys get your alcohol when you were underage? Older friends for them. Fake ID, a real ID from other people, targeting stores that don't obey the laws, or peer pressure from younger clerks. I will tell you, just in my enforcement perspective, fake IDs are huge. Those are rampant. They're absolutely everywhere. There's a lot of them. Kids have no trouble using them. They'll use them with a lot of confidence. But I know that they target stores that don't obey either. Okay, so social media, right? I don't know how big of a problem it is. Silverton's not that big, but if I can go somewhere and buy alcohol, if I'm 19 or 20 years old, as soon as I leave there, I'm putting it on whatever platform I'm on, right? And 700 of my 50 best friends know, like, hey, that's the spot to go buy alcohol. And we've seen this, going into restaurants that they know they don't card, like that's kind of the spot. It turns into the place where the underage kids go, because they don't even necessarily have to rely on their fake IDs. They can go somewhere where they feel comfortable in the fact that they're not even going to get questioned. So those are the two biggest ones I see, but fake IDs are huge. And all I say to, people who own a licensed establishment is, if you make sure that you're checking IDs, that's your first line of defense. If they do pass a fake ID to you, you have an affirmative action or affirmative defense against an action against you. And we'll go through IDs here in just a second. That's coming up. But so that's why it's so important to make sure that you're checking IDs, because it actually protects you under the law.
And I believe Sheriff Conrad has a question.
All right.
Hey, sorry, I'm going back to the shall not serve two in there is the known habitual drunkard. And that's something we've been having an issue with. We have a person that, in my opinion, is drinking himself to death in establishments. We've made it known to establishments and our retail establishments that we consider this person a known habitual drunkard, and most establishments have graciously complied and understand the situation, but we have some that are not and feel as though this person is not adequately identified as a known habitual drunkard. In your opinion, what is it that formally identifies the person in the eyes of the liquor license holder?
That's actually an interesting one, Sheriff. The way that used to be deemed, I mean, there still is a current process, is that it had to go through and you actually had to be deemed by a judge. And that was typically only done by family members. So, if you knew that Tom was the local town drunk and it was going to be an issue and, you're worried for him, a family member would actually have to go and petition the court to get that person deemed. We have seen, and I would encourage you, because I don't know the exact process they went through, where local law enforcement is actually able to do so now. I know that the city of Cortez did this, and I can put you into contact with somebody over there, but there is a process that you would have to go through to actually, you can't just go around and say, hey, Jones over here is our local drunk, don't serve him anywhere. There's actual documentation you would have to provide to every licensed establishment that would be within the jurisdiction of where that person is at. But let me get with you after this and I can put you in touch, because I know that Cortez PD did that about a year ago. And as far as I know, it's worked pretty well. But so what would have to happen is that they would have to have that notification. Then if they served somebody or sold to them after they'd been notified, that's when they would be in violation of serving to a known habitual drunkard.
That's all I can find on it, is they have to be notified, but there seems to be no clear definition about what that notification is. Something that needs to be a photograph, which I've looked into, and there seems to be some potential HIPAA concerns there as well. So I've been reluctant to provide a photograph at this point.
Yeah, and let me, like I said, I'll get with you. I've got the court case that opened that up to help put that through, and then we can get through. And like I said, I didn't help with the city of Cortez, but I know that they have established that process, and we can look at that as, because there is a process of going about it. But I can get that information to you. Absolutely. All right, so when we're talking about valid proof of age, in Colorado, the law doesn't prohibit underage people from entering a liquor licensed establishment. There's no law that says, someone who's 12 or 15 or 20 can go into any of your licensed establishments here. There's no law that says that. What it does prohibit is licensed establishments from selling to somebody under the age of 21, right? The Colorado does require all of our off-premise establishments to verify an ID. So physically check an ID of anyone that appears to be under the age of 50. So that is a statutory requirement that they have. Licenses can refuse to sell alcohol beverages to any person that cannot produce adequate, currently valid identification of age. Go ahead. And so when we talk about the acceptable types of IDs, these are, I think there's 7 forms now that we accept in the state of Colorado. And when I say acceptable forms of IDs, what we're talking about is if you accept any of these forms of ID and it turns out that they used a fraudulent ID, it was fake, then you would have that affirmative defense. So if you use something outside of these, say somebody comes up and they have their, I don't know, college ID or a prison, a DOC card. We get that question a lot. Those are not an acceptable form of ID. So if someone came in with their, student ID from the college that they go to, and you looked at it and you checked it and you're like, okay, you're good to go, and they turn out to be underage, then you have no affirmative defense. So that's why when we say acceptable forms, if you accept one of these and it turns out to be fraudulent or fake, then you guys are protected.
Are tribal IDs included in that top point?
They're not. They are not. That's like the DOC, tribal IDs, a hunting and fishing license, a college ID. None of those are. So, and what you see with all of these, they're all government issued. They do have to be valid, not expired. They're all gonna have a photo and date of birth. And again, always compare, we tell people, always compare the picture to the person making the purchase. A lot of times, people will borrow their cousin's ID or their sister's ID, or they'll find a old fake ID that one of their friends doesn't need anymore. So always make sure that it's that same person in front of you. Like I said, these kids are very brazen about fake IDs. So they know that a lot of people aren't looking that closely. Just the fact that they'll present an ID with the right, date of birth and a general kind of picture. A lot of them get away with it a lot. So always check that out. Go ahead. Okay, so you always ask for proof of age if there's any doubt, or for off premises, if they're under the age of 50, statutorily have to ask. If you can't get acceptable ID from them, you don't have to sell, right? You have to be able to prove that who you're putting alcohol into the hands of is not under the age of 21. Because we see that a lot with compliance checks where they do the right thing and they ask. But then, the kid will say, no, I don't have an ID on me. And then they're just like, they want to make that sell so bad. Well, how old are you? Or can someone vouch for you? Or have you been in here before? Or I thought, I thought I recognized them. So if they don't have any acceptable form and you're questioning it, you shouldn't serve to them. With the face mask order, I don't know how much you guys still have seeing face masks up here, but with that executive order, it does state that any age regulated product, you can ask them to remove their face masks temporarily to ensure that, that they are who they say they are, and you can verify their identity. Different things we look at, lighting, comfort and education of the person checking an ID, the right job or the right tools for the job. A lot of places have ID scanners or black lights. Comfort and education of the person checking the ID, I think, is a really big one. If you have employees that maybe don't feel comfortable asking somebody or questioning somebody, that's something that you have to gauge on whether or not that's going to be an issue for you, because that is something that they have to be comfortable with. If there's a question that they're going to ask, or be comfortable with denying the sale if they, someone can't show them that they're of the proper age. Go ahead. And there's a newer Colorado ID, and I'm sorry, I didn't have time to put it in here. Have you guys seen the new one? Yeah, okay. It is so much easier to read. Yes. So it looks good. It's crazy how this is the second form back, but the one on the right was updated just earlier this year. They came out with a whole new design. It's colored different. We got a lot of phone calls when that ID came out because a lot of people thought that they were fake. But there is a new color scheme to the Colorado ID. Go ahead. And then just the underage ID. Temporary permits are now printed out, on a piece of paper. So they will look like that. Yeah.
Now, with some license, I noticed that are vertical, but they're not under 21.
Yeah, so in Colorado,
Different states.
yeah, I was gonna say in Colorado, they will be, but like Arizona and some of those really populated states, they will issue those through their 27th birthday. So you really have to look at those because they may be vertical, but they may still be of age once they've passed that. And that's the same with the Colorado ID. They expire 20 days after their 21st birthday so that they have a valid ID in time to go and get an actual adult ID. With a temporary permit, if they have their expired ID and their temporary, you can use those together as a valid form of ID. Have any of you guys seen the new digital ID? They're pretty cool. Yeah, so this is also something that is an acceptable form of ID. You don't have to accept it if you don't feel comfortable with it. I think it's Colorado, Maryland, and I want to say Washington. There's only 3 states right now that have this, but if you haven't seen it, go ahead.
How is that okay if a business, I've been using this a lot.
Okay.
Throughout, I don't even carry my wallet most of the time now because I can do my credit card and the ID on the phone. But I didn't realize that if I went somewhere and they're like, yeah, sorry, that doesn't work, I'd be out of luck.
Yeah. you-
So like, you can't do that with a license. You'd be like here and they're like,
Right.
right.
Yeah, and it's just since it's so new, this coming out, the governor has granted that it is an acceptable form. Even some police agencies are now accepting it as like on a traffic stop instead of using your.
Like in a traffic stop, like, is that not?
No, it's not. It's not. I think State Patrol has gone to accepting it, maybe Fort Collins Police. But so it's not an acceptable form in that facet. Yes, but I like it too. It's a
Carry
great
my-
ID. Yeah. Carry your ID.
Yeah, just leave the wallet in the car. Just the ID, just the ID.
I just thought it was okay in all of Colorado.
Yeah, so they've allowed it as an acceptable form, but it's not like required, I guess, for a business to accept it.
Got it.
And I would see that more and more as things go digital, that people will be more and more comfortable with it. And there's a lot of really good security features. I'm sure if you use it all the time, you've been able to play around with it. So there's really good security features as far as, you know, I think it'd be a lot harder to fake if you're actually checking it. I mean, anyone could do a screenshot, but that's pretty easy to disprove on a picture. So I like it. A lot of places, I haven't found anywhere that doesn't accept it. But they do have the right to not if they don't feel comfortable with it. So. And again, these are just the security features, you know, the free floating flower. When you press on it, you can see the text size change. This is something that is specific to person. So if you don't think it's the person that's there in front of you, who it is, you can have them log out and then get back into that app. If it's not them, they're not gonna be able to do that because it takes facial recognition. But we're seeing a lot more with this. And like I said, there's a lot more states, I think, that are going to be going to this. So I think just the way that the world is going, digital is the way to go. And so I think you'll see a lot more of it. Go ahead. So, we go through checking IDs, making sure that you ask for it, right? That's always the first thing that you need to do. Once you ask for it, get it in your hand. A lot of people will try and conceal things by just like flashing it in a wallet or maybe holding their finger over something. Verifying the date of birth, comparing the holder to the photo, and then checking the ID checking guide for non-familiar IDs. Does everybody have one of those that's licensed here that has establishments? The ID checking guide book. It's like a book that has all the IDs in it. So you can go to like idcheckingguide.com and get one of those, but that is part of an affirmative defense on a fake ID is that you had something to like reference that. So, and that's just got to be on the license premise, but it's a really great, if you haven't seen one, they've got all of the US issued IDs and plus some like from Canada and Mexico. So if you get an ID and you're not sure about it, or like even the new Colorado ID where you're like, oh God, that's fake, right? That's not even the right colors, where you can go and actually compare it to the book. And if you renew it every year, they'll have the most recent forms of IDs from each state. But you can have that book up to 3 years and still be covered for your affirmative defense.
I think they've also got like the one I've seen has like passports for like literally every country.
There's an international one. Yeah. So if you're going to take an international ID, I would get the international ID checking guide. Yep. It's like that big. Go ahead.
I have a question real quick about the digital ID. Sorry, going back. Does that app only work if there's cell service?
It works all the time.
It works all the time. It's like on your phone.
Okay,
Okay.
you don't need internet to access it. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, that is good to know. I didn't know.
Because it's just the Face ID pops up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, cool.
It also has the vaccine card in it,
Yes.
Nice.
in that app.
You guys are teaching me things today.
Auto registration and insurance.
Yeah, which is why I thought it was okay for traffic stops.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, you'll still, I mean, I don't know.
I guess it depends on who pulls you over.
That's what I'm saying. Over, like I haven't been pulled over to know, but I know as far as like, there are certain agencies that are going to saying, yes, this is what we will accept it.
It's
So,
hard for me to believe the prosecutor is going to prosecute you because you didn't have your physical license and you had your digital.
right. Yeah, there's always,
So much easier to like, the phone's usually in a apparent public
right?
place in the car. So like, they're like license, registration, proof of insurance, you're just like
There you go.
reaching the glove box or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So fake IDs, Colorado law permits licensees to confiscate fake IDs. If the ID presented is fake, altered, or used by someone else. So if you guys have someone that you feel is using, a fake ID, you have the ability to confiscate that. If you do confiscate it, it does need to be turned over to law enforcement within 72 hours. Or you would call the sheriff's office here, or if we happen to be in town, we'll swing by and get them. And then there again is that affirmative defense. If the minor presented a fake ID of those types that are acceptable, and you have that ID checking guide issued within the last 3 years, you would have an affirmative defense against any type of regulatory action.
Now, how do you get that book updated?
I think you just go on to like idchecking.com and like order, and then once you order, it's an automatic renewal every year where they'll send it to you. I think they're like $20. I mean, it's a really good price to pay, I think, for being able to have that affirmative defense. And they're really, I mean, they've got a lot of really good information in them as well. Are you guys a very like tourist area? Do you guys see a lot of like the state IDs? Yeah, not just Colorado folks coming up for the weekend kind of thing. So I mean, it's good to have because, there's a lot of different IDs out there. It's hard to say that you would know any of them if you saw them. So detecting ID, we just ask that people make a reasonable effort, hold the ID, check it for, the state seal, look for the director's signature, match the person to, who's holding it, just looking for different obvious things. Everybody knows what a Colorado ID looks like, or the majority of what Colorado IDs look like, with the exception of what just came out. So you look at those things and, just looking for something that would be obvious. Like, does this not look like this is the person who's holding this? Like, are they a lot blonder or darker hair, or maybe they're 300 pounds heavier or lighter? Are there things that you can look at to where, just being reasonable as far as checking an ID goes? Go ahead. Just common mistakes. We went through all that. Go ahead. All right, so visibly intoxicated patrons. So things that might indicate visible intoxications, right? We always ask this, like, who's seen somebody who's visibly intoxicated? Only a handful. I'm like, oh no. Where do you guys live at, right? Everybody, like, what do you think of when you think of somebody who's had too much to drink?
Slurring.
Slurring, right? Everything up there, falling down, slurring. I mean, they have no motor function with their hands anymore, being really loud and obnoxious. Like, you all, like, when I say someone physically intoxicated, I'm sure you have a picture in your mind of who that person is, right? So that's what we're thinking about, like signs that are showing, they visibly have had enough to drink, right? So we'll go to that. And that's what the statute says, is visible intoxication. So when we talk about a reasonable person, when most people look at that person and think they're intoxicated, that's reasonable when you're working in an establishment. Sometimes there are some medical things that might be going on, but reasonably, like, what do you think? And then obviously severe intoxication can constitute a medical emergency. And I'm sure you probably see your fair share, because what elevation are we at up here? 9,300. Right. So, I mean, alcohol is going to affect people differently here than it would, down on the beach. Right. If you're a big tourist area where you have people coming from lower levels, even from like Grand Junction, right, we're probably about half that. So you're going to see alcohol affect people differently up here. So that's certainly something to look at and to be aware of, and then to know how to, handle that. If you have someone coming into your liquor store and they're visibly showing, signs of having too much, to know how to handle that and, to not serve them.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Question for you. So, unlike many states, Colorado does not have any law prohibiting people serving alcohol from consuming alcohol. How does the state deal with someone who's visibly intoxicated serving alcohol?
If they're visibly intoxicated, if they're serving themselves, it wouldn't be any different than serving someone else. If they're visibly intoxicated and they're still serving themselves, that would be the same case.
We get a ticket for over serving yourself.
You've done that. We have, so it would be handled the same way. But as far as them, serving others, it's not ideal, but there's not any, statutory rule that would prohibit that. I mean,
So to
obviously,
clarify,
you set
someone-
yourself up for, obviously more violations if you're visibly intoxicated. I think it'd be hard to argue whether or not you're checking IDs or you're serving, people who are visibly intoxicated, but that would be a case by case type of situation.
Yeah, and so to clarify, you're saying that if someone visibly intoxicated as a server is serving others, then there's no violation. However, if they're found to be serving themselves, then it's the same
It's the same thing.
citation that'll be written for over service to
Yep.
someone who's visibly intoxicated.
Yep. And like I said, I think if you're visibly intoxicated serving, I'm sure there's other things there's other violations you could find out of that.
Yeah, it's obviously an issue.
Yes, it's not ideal. Okay. So yeah, intervention techniques, early detection and action. If you see somebody who shows up at your establishment and they've had, maybe they're not visibly intoxicated, but they're happy, maybe that's somewhere you're going to look at. Offering alternative food or drinks, again, having that food, slower service for fast drinkers, getting management involved if it's not something you're comfortable with. And then just having policy and procedure in place. It's always good to know how you're going to deal with the situation before that situation presents itself. So if this is, somebody comes in and this is how they are, this is what we're going to do. Knowing what you're going to do or having a response is easier than trying to figure it out once you're face to face with that. All right, so conduct of establishment. I don't know how wild it is up in Silverton, but this goes literally, over loitering, serving intoxicated patrons, not allowing any type of, disorderly conduct, undue noise, rowdiness, or any kind of disturbances or activity that are offensive to the average citizen. So this is kind of like your catch-all when we talk about conduct. Go ahead. Then we go into the attire and conduct of employees and patrons. So basically you have to be clothed when you're selling or serving alcohol. There's no separate license for a gentleman's club or a strip club, but those, employees have to be covered when they're serving alcohol. So it'd be different than the entertainment portion. Anybody involved in the seller service has to have everything covered up. And again, that's why I'm saying live entertainment, it is permitted. Obviously, this is Colorado. We allow live entertainment. We don't want to see any, we want it to be just that entertainment, dancing, whatever the case may be. We don't want to see any type of, simulation of sex acts or fondling or those types of things. That is prohibited. And same thing with visual displays. We're not going to allow any visual display that shows people permitted in those types of prohibited acts. Marijuana consumption. So this was really big when marijuana became legal here, and then just even more recently in the years where we're enforcing it. It did come out where it is said that a liquor license establishment is considered a public space. So marijuana is prohibited to be smoked or consumed in public. So therefore you cannot smoke or consume marijuana products in a liquor license premise. So that's what's covering us on that. And then also with local ordinances, any type of ordinance that a city, town, county, municipality comes up with that may be more restrictive than what the liquor code says, is that that's enforceable, right? So just because there's not a state law that says you can't be in somewhere after 10, if the town of Silverton says this is what our ordinance is, then that is to be enforced, by administrative or enforcement action. So you guys are covered there. And here's our public consumption changes, and I think we kind of went over this pretty well earlier. If you guys still have questions, we can go through those, but the state law does no longer allow public consumption. So there's no state law that would allow it. It has to be adopted by some type of resolution or ordinance if you're going to allow public consumption, in spaces in your town.
It allows you to be less strict. And
Yes.
that is where it allows you to be.
Yep.
less strict.
Yep, there you go.
Decide.
There you go. So when we talk about where it can be consumed, anywhere where a local or county ordinance allows it. You cannot bring your own alcohol onto a licensed premise, and we're gonna look a little further into that lodging entertainment information that you received. And you can't remove any alcohol from a liquor licensed establishment. Go ahead. So there is obviously exceptions to every rule. Pre-COVID, this was always the exception, was a 750 milliliter bottle of wine. So you go to a restaurant, you sit down, you want to, have a nice bottle of wine with your meal. Maybe you can't finish it. You could reseal that and take it with you. So that was, this has been around for, as long as I can remember. That was a allowance or an exception to the removal of alcohol. So go ahead to the next one. When COVID hit, there was a House bill that was put into effect, which temporarily suspended the enforcement for on-premise retailers of allowing alcohol to be sold for takeout or delivery. Okay, since then, they have extended it. It's delaying the repeal until July 1st of 2025, so that on-premise establishments can sell alcohol for takeout and delivery. Okay, so this is different from, like, I'm sitting in your restaurant and I have a margarita and I can't finish it. I can't then pour it into a cup and take it with me to go. This is specifically if I'm going and I'm going to order something for takeout, I'm allowed to do that. So if I want to go to your restaurant and order a couple of drinks to take out, I can do that. Or if I want to have them delivered. I don't know, do you guys have anyone deliver up here? No.
Delivered, no, but the two breweries, you can get growlers to go.
Yep, yeah, and that's something they've always been allowed to do, under that dual. But so this is for all the on-premise. So takeout and delivery, everybody who's eligible for it. Go ahead, and then they do have to have, these are just all the licenses listed. They do have to have the takeout and delivery permit. They can only do so between the hours of 7 a.m. and midnight. I think that the permit is still free. So it's really good for people to apply for it now before there, gets a fee associated to it. The amounts, there is a limitation on amounts. So from 750 to 1,500 milliliters of wine, 72 fluid ounces to 144 fluid ounces of beer, and then 750 milliliters to 1 liter of spirituous liquors. That's all that can be ordered for a takeout order or to be delivered. So you can't exceed that. And then this is very similar to what we saw for the liquor store and drugstore delivery. The person placing the order has to provide their name, date of birth, and delivery address. Again, no third-party delivery is allowed, so you can't have Uber or DoorDash or someone come in to deliver those alcohol beverages. It has to be by an employee of the establishment. They have to be 21 years of age or older to deliver. And again, under no circumstances are you allowed to deliver to somebody who's under the age of 21. So there does have to be an age verification upon making that delivery. All right, go ahead.
Quick question.
Mhm.
Since this happened a bit in my military career, when I had deliveries in Washington. In Colorado, can a single, like if an apartment, so you're having a house party, can that one residence or group order delivery multiple times from the same establishment?
Yeah, so
It's just like one bottle at a time.
so the limitation on size is per transaction. So yeah, if you can, ordered multiple rooms, if they did that, that's loophole. There's a lot of them, unfortunately, but yeah, so that the limitation is per transaction.
Have a lot of theirs.
Go to service and the delivery person sees that they are obviously drunk. Are they required to still go through with that, or?
No, so those same laws apply where you're not selling, serving to someone who's visibly intoxicated or under 21. So if you went and you couldn't find anybody of age, you're not going to deliver. So yeah, there's no requirement that they have to. There are some pretty strict requirements as far as sealed container goes. Unless it's in a bottle that came from the manufacturer, so a sealed beer can, liquor bottle, wine bottle, then you have to have, go ahead, the next one, if you're putting it into, some type of container, a cup, something like this, they have to have, go ahead to the next one. It has to have a cap. It has to be tamper resistant or tamper evident. It's got to be sealed somehow. And then it also has to have a warning label on it. Go ahead to the next one. Oh, so we've got all of our different containers. It has to have the warning label for delivery or takeout. So you can't pop a straw in your margarita to go and, walk out with it. It actually has to be sealed. If there is a straw, hole that has to have a piece of tape or something over that, and then you have to have the warning label. And so those are all things that came with, that it's, I think, a nice benefit for on-premise establishments that they're still allowed to do takeout and delivery. But just like with anything else, there's, rules that go into place with making sure that they're doing that safely.
If somebody purchases alcohol to go, and then they decide to drink it in the establishment and they open it, they drink it, and then they leave, is there any law against that, or is that allowed?
So they wouldn't be able to take it.
They can't take it with them, but if they decide to stay and they drink it there and then leave the empty can.
No, yeah.
Okay,
Yep, they can consume it on the premise, because they're allowed, right? It's an on-premise.
right, so there's no weirdness with.
They just wouldn't be able to
Intended to go, but then they drink.
it and drink half of it and take it and go. You couldn't do that at that point.
Right, gotcha.
And then curbside orders, we saw a lot of people get really, innovative, and the entrepreneurial spirit was live and well during COVID. But you can't sell alcohol curbside. It's got to be on the licensed premise where that is sold. You can't take an ice cream cart and attach it to the back of your bike and drive around from your licensed premise and sell it to people. There's nothing like that can go on. It has to be sold from the licensed premise and removed from the licensed premise.
I think a lot of the confusion with that was the cannabis industry was allowed to sell
Were
curbside.
they?
So it's like, well, why can't I buy this controlled substance curbside, but not this?
But not this one.
And then again, introducing alcohol onto a licensed premise. You cannot bring alcohol from an outside source onto a licensed premise to consume. Inspections of licensed premise. These are open to any place on that premise that we saw in the diagram, right? So anywhere within your licensed premise are open to state or local licensing authorities, their investigators, peace officers. And this is going to be during all business hours and all other times of apparent activity for the purpose of inspection or investigation. So if there is a liquor license premise, you can go in and inspect that. You can go anywhere that was on that licensed premise to do that inspection or some type of investigation. What we typically look for is making sure that the licenses are posted conspicuously. So again, it's a dual licensing state. They have to have the state and local liquor license, making sure they have a state sales tax. And if it's somewhere that serves, it's a restaurant, that they have their food service license posted. We're also looking for, I think if you click one more, warning signs. And this is the one for tobacco. There's a great big white one I'm sure you guys are all familiar with for alcohol, making sure that they have those signs posted. If you guys sell cigarettes, we'd look for both the tobacco and the alcohol warning sign. And then just looking through, we'll go through and check the bar, making sure that there's not any contaminated liquor, that there's not any type of infusions, looking at the dispensing system, we'll ask where your alcohol or tobacco products are coming in from, making sure you're getting them from wholesalers and distributors. Those are the types of things that we look at when we go through to do our inspections. And then we also, 2021, it went into legislation. It's so statutorily now anywhere who sells tobacco has to obtain a license to do so. So we do a lot of the same things on the tobacco side now, where we're going in and doing inspections, making sure that they have a license, making sure that they're getting their tobacco from the proper outlets and those types of things. Having, the warning sign. And then just the different consequences, personal criminal liability, any type of violation that we talked about can be criminally written. A lot of them are handled administratively. I will tell you, selling to somebody who was visibly intoxicated or selling to somebody underage, the state has a zero tolerance of that where, a summons will be issued. So we do have the criminal liability there. Civil liability, right? That's somebody, if something happens where they have the ability to come back to sue, the person, the establishment, the company, whatever that may be. And then administrative penalty. So this is actually against the liquor license where we talked about, you guys have the authority to deny, revoke, issue a fine, those types of things. Those are the different administrative penalties that can take place against a liquor license and now a tobacco license too. And then just like kind of what the liability is, criminal liability. If you get a ticket for selling to somebody underage, that's what you're looking at. It is a misdemeanor, because it's a pretty serious offense. Definitely not worth not checking ID, to sell to somebody who's underage. Go ahead. And it's the same thing with criminal liability. It's pretty similar. And then again, with civil liability, right? What are people coming after you for in that instance? Usually people sue civilly for money. So, something were to happen where you sue somebody under the age of 21 or you sell to somebody who's visibly intoxicated. That would be the civil portion of it if something were to, happen outside of that. And then again, admin actions, we went through that. That's something that's an action that's going to be taken against your license, where that's, ours range from warning letters all the way up to suspension or revocation, just depending on what the situation was and what the violation was, what the history of the establishment was. They are graduated penalties. So if it's a establishment that, continues to make the same kinds of mistakes or have the same kinds of problems, you graduate from fines to suspension to, going to hearings and those types of things. So. And then compliance with public health orders. I don't know if there's any of these still around, but I know when COVID first hit, a lot of places didn't want to be in compliance or they didn't want to shut down. And so there was an emergency regulation put into place that said, hey, you have to comply with any type of emergency order that comes out or any type of, public health order.
Is that still in place?
Yep, so there's still the regulation, but I don't know of any public health orders or emergency orders that are left out there. And then the very worst thing that could happen, we never like to see this, is a temporary summary suspension. This is something that would have to be, so egregious that it's actually harmful or threatening to the health or safety of the public, where you would go in and immediately suspend the liquor license. So you would shut them down immediately at that point. A hearing would have to be held within 15 days of that. But again, this would have to be something that's some type of an emergency action where, they need to be shut down and they need to not have a license at all. I know that we'll never see that up in Silverton, right? Good licensees up here. Entities that qualify for special event permits. This is a list of everybody that applies. Typically, the most common, place that we see is a nonprofit organization. If you're applying, I don't know if that's what you have.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah,
that's what we're going for.
is that what you, yeah, so that's the most common entity that we have apply for or that qualify for special event permits. There are, different local governments, we see that quite a bit. Charitable organizations, there's some of the other ones, some of the higher education, occasionally we get those, but nonprofits are the largest bulk of what we see applying for those. And that you'd qualify for it. Okay.
I do get quite a few, I deal with special events for the town. I do get quite a few individuals wanting to do their own permit.
No,
They qualify.
they do not qualify. Yeah, so unless they meet one of these, they wouldn't qualify to get that. You can't just, as an individual, come in and want to have a party. And the reason for that is because they're profiting off of this, and so even like a nonprofit, you're doing this to raise money for X, Y, or Z. So you can't just have a individual come in to do something like that.
Just to be clear, this only matters if someone's selling alcohol.
Correct.
So like, so the questions before about like private events,
Uh-huh.
like whether it's somebody's house or a business that doesn't have a liquor license, if they're giving away the alcohol,
Mhm.
or if the alcohol is being brought on premises by somebody else and being consumed by people over 21, what are the rules? How does that?
If no money's.
Yeah, so
Honey bee.
this is specifically where you're applying for this type of license. Doing something at your own residence, that's not something that, because it's private, right? And so we have that same standard for if I'm gonna go down to,
We're not talking about residences. Nobody's worried about residences.
that's the same.
Let's get clear there. So we're talking about somebody rents Kendall, fire department rents Kendall, and they want to have a party over there. They don't have to have a license.
They do not, as long as it is a private. So this is what we say with private. It's the same standard as your residence, right? If I rent out whatever space, he's talking about, there's not a license there. It cannot be in any way open to public. So I can't be advertising that, on social media. I can't put a billboard up that says, hey, Friday night, we're doing this, or flyers around town. I can't just show up, as Lisa coming up here on Friday night and be able to walk into that. At that point, it's no longer private. It'd be something that's open in the public, then you're open to the public consumption laws. So, but if it's private, hey, this is just for the, the firefighters of whatever district. And when you get there, it's them and a +1, great. But if exactly, or a wedding, or, if you or I are just able to go into this, or they are somehow advertising this publicly, that's no longer a private event. I mean, so that I would say would be no different than going to your home, right? If I'm at my house and I'm having all of you guys over, and he shows up, he's not just gonna walk into my house and hang out, right? It's not a public space. Not that you're not invited.
Thanks. I'll limp.
But so it's the same standard for if you can host private events and not need a license, but it has to be private by that. Exactly. Yeah, you're not advertising publicly. You're not just letting people walk in. It's for a very specific group of, this is who I'm having into this space. And yeah, so we're talking with this, we're talking where you're pulling an actual license to have an event. This is a special event permit.
Now, before moving on, the town did do ordinance 2015-02, authorizing the town to approve special event permits.
Okay, so you did the local option.
An email from someone in your division stating that we only have to notify the state special events, but the local liquor licensing authority has final approval.
And that's wonderful. Yeah, so that we call that the local option, like where you guys are in charge of it. So like you do notify us. If we were coming through town and we're like, hey, what's that going on over there? We're aware that there's a license in the area, but yeah, it's wonderful when you guys just approve it all on your own level. So you don't ever have to wait for us to get some type of approval for the event. So
We still have to follow the state statutes regarding who can apply.
yes,
Length of time.
yeah, all of that's statutory. So all of that is mandatory as far as what you have to follow. All right, so again, 15 special event dates per calendar year. You're able to sell alcohol to raise money. Donated or purchased alcohol beverages can be resold by the glass. All alcohol types can be donated. If it's not by the glass, they must purchase a minimum of wholesale cost. Manufacturers can donate alcohol, equipment, and labor to special events. All right, so you can store alcohol beverage stock outside of the designated area, but that does have to be included on your application. There has to be a diagram of the proposed storage area. They have to show that they have some kind of lawful possession of that, whether that be through, lease or deed or whatever the case, you have to show that you're lawfully in possession of it. It cannot be a different liquor licensed premise. So you can't have your special event permit and then store alcohol, in somebody else's cooler or refrigerator of their licensed premise. It's got to be a non-licensed premise. They are subject to inspection and it's not authorized to be used long-term. So usually we say 3 days before and 3 days after is when you can store off the site of, your special event permit. As far as donations go, you can get donations by wholesalers. And that's going to include your wineries, your brew pubs, your distillery pubs, your vintners, restaurants. Donations are at no cost or no cost for hospitality or fundraising, so you can resell those by the drink. Off-premise retailers can donate only from their existing inventory. So if you're going to go to one of your local liquor stores, they can't put in some kind of special order for you. If they have that inventory, they can donate it. But if they don't, then they cannot. And then again, they can donate to organizations that would otherwise qualify for a special event but are exempt with an invoice. If it's held at an unlicensed premise establishment, they have to do everything through the license. So if you're going to hold your nonprofit event on somewhere that already has a liquor license, everything goes through them at a zero invoice. So you'd actually use their license to bring the alcohol onto the premise. You guys wouldn't bring it in like separately. Sense?
I'm not getting that.
So it'd be like an itemized receipts of what you're bringing in.
It's gonna be like a zero invoice. Yeah, so most, like, you're gonna do a special event, so you're probably gonna, you're gonna do it in the park, right?
I see, okay.
You're licensing like this area of the park, but if you want to have it somewhere that already has a license, you have a club license here in town, so they have a liquor license, you can hold it on their premise. But then everything that comes in that's donated to you has to actually come through their liquor license, because there is one.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Whereas if you're doing it just in the park, like, you're handling that, you're getting the invoices for it, you're the one telling them, hey, bring it here onto the licensed premise.
So they would be, through their liquor license, they would be kind of just funneling
Exactly.
alcohol.
The alcohol, they'd be bringing the alcohol onto that premise. That's what
Okay.
they did in.
Gotcha.
And it's for donations. So they're going to need to show, the zero invoice, which you would have a copy of, to show that it was donated.
So the special events permit can, like, we actually operate out of a building and it's actually out of the town,
Okay.
which is something else I wanted to ask about, but we could actually hold events like in other places with that as a nonprofit
Yeah, you can get your special event permit for
wherever.
wherever. I mean, you can find a space to license, or, that the town approves. I can't tell you, you gotta go set up in the park. They might tell you no.
Right.
Yes, but yes, you can do a special event permit. You see them.
Events that happen in the park all the time.
Yeah, the park,
I mean, I hope you guys.
Yeah,
think it works out.
yeah, close down Main Street and have it there, or, have it in a, I don't know. People are very creative with that, but
We haven't been totally sure where to hold or where to get the permit for an out of town
I
event.
think to go through the county.
Go through the county.
Through LaDonna, but she's not that familiar.
Yeah.
with the county, and since we're switching to town, I'll put all the forms online for you.
Okay. Awesome.
So it's the same process, just because, like I said, and I don't know if the county has the local option or not. But so you would start with them and then go that route.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, it depends on where your space is, where you're wanting to host your events.
Mhm.
But let's see. So yeah, that's with donated alcohol. So yeah, you can have a special event on a licensed premise. That happens occasionally.
Okay.
But you're still gonna have to go through the county commissioners unless they appoint a separate body.
Mhm.
So like the town passed the ordinance, made him the hearing officer for liquor license.
Well, they made a license authority. I'm the hearing officer for it, but they have an ordinance for the license authority. And so by default, the county commissioners are the license authority unless they decide to change.
Okay. So county commissioner.
The county commissioner,
Who would you go through for your approval?
yeah.
You
go
would get
through
the application, turn it into LaDonna, she'd take it to the commissioners, they'd approve it, then it would go to the state.
They put it on an agenda and have a public hearing,
Okay.
like we do a public hearing for our licenses.
I mean, every time they have a special event out at the powerhouse, do they go through the county?
I don't think anybody wants to weigh in on that.
Okay, never mind.
It's been, yeah, I mean, yeah, we've been kind of going through it, but we haven't sold anything.
Yeah.
This is for liquor. And any private parties that are not advertised or open to the public.
So this is completely separate. So I don't want to like mix.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of questions in this. I don't want to mix these are just for special event permits.
Which is where alcohol, if it's sold, you have to have one of these.
Yeah.
If it's given away, then you don't.
Okay.
And there's nuances to that.
Only if it's a private event.
Yes.
Okay, yep, there we go. Go ahead. This is just more of the donations. Again, yeah, just more about, a lot about donations. There's a lot when we didn't used to allow, and this was probably a decade ago, you couldn't get donated alcohol to use for a special event. So when that came into effect, there was a lot of rules that came with it. But what other questions do you guys have? Has this been helpful? I know that you had some very specific things that you had in mind. I don't know if we covered that or not.
For the town, because we do have that authority, we can make more stringent requirements, but we can't lessen what the state has, correct?
Exactly, except for the public consumption.
Yeah.
Except for that. But are we allowed to basically take, I think it's DR 8442 and rework it, or 8452, but rework it to fit town needs? It's the similar.
So you can, yeah, you can take any of those forms you want, like if you guys want to make your own, and like this is what you have to fill out for the town and this is what you fill out for the state. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of entities that have, like, this is going to be my portion of the application and this is the state's portion. But we do have to have that state piece since it's dual, because like I said, it'll start here and then you guys will send that to us. But yeah, if you guys want to come up with your own form that's more fitting, especially, when you have a lot of mountain towns or smaller towns, you have specific needs that go along with being in the community like this. So if there's something that you need, yeah, absolutely.
So more of a fee schedule question. Can the municipalities decide their own local fees for different types of businesses, or is it set by statutes? Like, you look at the fee schedule for an application renewal and there's just a bunch of different prices.
Never been asked that question. Let me find out for you on that.
Because in the past, our fee schedule has kind of had more like a flat rates for local businesses, whereas you look at the fee schedule on the state form, and there's $73 for this one or $179 for this one, and it's and all.
And I want to say, I want to be a Debbie Downer here, but I want to say that somehow that's set, because I know, like, I work in our financial unit quite a bit, where when I'm looking at those, it's like an automatic in the account system. So I wouldn't think that if everybody had something different, like that we would be able to manage that in our system. So I think, but let me make sure. Okay.
Curious what the parameters are for the town to designate areas for open container. So you mentioned parks is like pretty common, or like Vale Village has.
Yeah, their whole village is.
Village area.
Yeah.
Like, what would be like if the town, this is a crazy hypothetical, what if the town said like the entirety of town allowed open containers? Is that not permitted by the state? It has to be specific areas, or what are kind of our guidance?
So like you wouldn't allow like in like roadways or, so there's specific sections like where it wouldn't be allowed, like just, per what kind of like the section is.
So can we tease that out? Because there's been a lot of people that have come and said that, look, we want to have a neighborhood block party in our alley.
Well, I'm asking about permanent as opposed to.
That's fine. Go ahead, but I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think it would be up to the town for you guys to sit down and say, hey, these are the spaces we would like to have. And like the village, it works, right? Because
it's all walking.
It's encumbered. There's no roadways that go through it. Because we're certainly not going to.
Like if, for example, we designated like our zoning district BP, which includes Green Street and Blair Street and all the cross streets, like the properties there, we still, like if someone had an open container on the sidewalk, we'd say that's okay. But if they like cross the street while they're crossing the street, not okay. Like, I'm just wondering what the
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some different.
Or is that not even possible to say that it has to be only walking districts like parks or closed streets
Or like if Blair Street were closed down
to the driving?
traffic every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and on those days specifically Blair Street were open for public consumption.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, obviously, like, we can figure out what the enforcement issues are and all that, but I'm just wondering if there's like hard and fast rules from the state.
As far as, well, so that it's going to be a local resolution or ordinance. So we're not gonna, you guys are gonna create that. we're not gonna come in.
Sure, but I think the question is about, do you know where there's streets that people drive on where open
I
container?
don't, that's what I was just gonna say. I can't think, like, I know, like,
So we couldn't just designate the entire town of Silverton as open.
they have. Like, space between town hall and like there's a open space. But like, there's, I think 3 or 4 of those on their main street those are the spots that they allow, like, public consumption. And that's the closest thing I can think of to something where, and they can walk, back and forth between them, but I can't think of anywhere they've licensed like an entire, besides like the villages where there's not any motor vehicle traffic
Got it.
through those.
'Cause practically, I think our issue is that it's gotta be an all or nothing, or it's kind of unenforceable. We saw the same thing with off-highway vehicles where we had like a specific route, and the big issue was because it's a route, it's confusing where the route is or isn't. And so from like the sheriff's perspective, the feedback we got was like, it needs to be all or nothing.
Yeah,
We went with nothing. Alcohol sounds like it'd have to be the same thing. Like, I guess we could say like one park, this is allowed,
yeah,
where else, and have lots of like visible signage.
sure.
But if we
It'd have
have
to
to
be
say like,
on the street, like closed to traffic.
but it would have to be like barricades and
Excellent.
signs and other things like that for it to be.
That's what, and I don't know of anywhere that does. And I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
something where it's like temporary, open.
New Orleans, they do it in New Orleans.
Oh, I mean, like in Colorado.
Not in Colorado, not in Colorado, but I'm
Colorado.
during the day and then they close them at night for
Yeah,
the through traffic.
So that would be the same if somebody wanted to do, we're not talking about selling alcohol, right? People are bringing their own. That they wouldn't, it's not regulated except for in the town, and it would be open container. If the town were to create an ordinance that allowed people to have a block party
Mhm.
or whatever criteria, then we could have block parties.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Block parties are more gonna fall though under like special event permit. I mean, even the town could pull a permit. to do it.
I'm not talking about an entity. I'm talking about a group in a community, in a block and coming together and saying, we want to close. off
And my neighbors getting together saying, hey.
Yeah. And we're gonna,
A block just let people bring their
Right.
own.
yeah, people are cooking out in the alley, like on their.
Not affiliated with.
Out of a place in
the-
You're gonna
in Arvada,
resolution for that area.
That would, yeah, that would be
downtown,
regulated by the state.
down to
That'd be regulated by the town. That would
downtown
be the
Arvada.
law, and that's it.
Wait, so say this again, just because I don't want to misunderstand what you're saying. So you want to shut down, like, say you want to shut down Green Street and have a block
So.
and just let everybody bring their own alcohol?
Like, we all decide that we want to go ahead and close the alley off, I guess you probably need to do, and that we want to be able to drink in the alley and hang out and barbecue.
Like people just, like my backyard, it's been extended to the alley?
Yes, we can interact in between.
Yeah, so yeah, besides, I mean, if there was something that allowed you to, and again, we're not.
That'd be the town, that'd be the town. The town can allow that.
Container law?
That's how that would have to be. Yeah, and that's all on open container.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We're not allowed to do that right now, by the way.
No.
Let me know when it's going on. It sounds like a good time.
Of Denver, their little downtown area of Arvada, they closed down in Old Town. They closed.
Full permits for that.
Do they pull permits for that? Okay, so last time that I was there, it was like they had all the streets shut down. and
Yeah.
Everyone was allowed to walk around.
Jumping back to payments. For special event permits, for town, not county. The payment that we typically receive $25 or $10 or total of 35, we would make that out to Department of Revenue. Do we get to set the pricing for what town receives, and do we still have to pay the state for that?
I said you're the local option, so you're not doing anything with us for special permits besides notifying.
Okay, so
It's just a notification.
Yeah.
yeah, so we can
Yeah,
make
that's
the payment.
The fee is ours, technically.
Yeah, you guys,
I think we've actually gotten it back before because
yeah,
you all don't receive a fee for our special.
no.
events. You're notified, so you know in case you're in town and that's.
So we only do that, like, if the county doesn't have something set up, like where they want us to approve those, but you
Yeah.
guys have opted in. So
Yeah.
we don't approve it, you just notify us when it's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what the county should probably do. I mean,
Yeah, and if they don't have that, that's where that would come to us and
Right.
do the whole process.
Make it easier to go. Have the same setup that we have with the county. Since our hearing.
Right, having to go into different.
Right.
have one more very specific question,
Yeah.
just clarification. So back to the rule that changed during COVID that allowed on premises liquor licensed
Take out and deliver.
places to sell to go.
Mhm.
The sticker goes on the container.
Mhm.
So for a bottle of wine specifically, does it need to be corked and closed or can it be closed with the factory seal on it? Or like
So anything that's not manufactured sealed has to have the warning label. So if you have,
just a bottle of wine, you could just like sell no sticker to go?
same with like a 6-pack or,
Okay,
Only goes on if it's been opened and then.
got it.
well, it can't be opened and
Like a mixed
resealed.
bag.
If it's not a
Like a
factory seal, like if you've got a
Right.
to-go cup with the top, you gotta.
Right, okay, okay.
Whereas if it's a crowler or a growler, the cans that have.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
latch, then
Yeah. Those are manufacturer sealed, so we don't have to have something on there. Stating, because basically what you're saying is a warning that, hey, this is containing alcohol, it's coming from, it doesn't have the establishment on there, but that's what the warning is. Whereas with a manufacturer sealed bottle, that's what that is, because it's already got the government label.
It's so like in Arkansas, if you want to buy a bottle of wine to go, they have to open it for you and then they reseal it and then you're allowed to take it.
Oh, my.
And they put a sticker on it, but they won't sell it to you sealed. They have to open it and you have to have a glass of wine and then you can take it with you. I don't know if it's
And that's kind of like our exemption with the wine, like that was the only exemption Colorado had before COVID.
right.
Is if you did open a glass of wine, you couldn't sell it in that sense, but if you open the glass or open the bottle, then you want to sell it and take it.
Right, but like in Arkansas, you have to open it.
Have to.
They wouldn't just sell you a closed bottle of wine. If you wanted to buy that, you just had to go to a liquor store.
Right. Yeah, and that was the purpose here too, until COVID hit.
But then liquor stores were all closed on Sundays. If you wanted to buy a bottle of wine, you had to go to the bar and go buy a bottle of wine and then take it home.
Got to do some really good planning in our.
Really, really backwards.
Effectively.
Yeah.
With the premise modifications for liquor permits, we have our bump outs on Main Street. Is that going to continue?
So those were probably like
Is that in place now?
temporary, unless they did it permanently, yeah, a temporary modification expires. So. It's like, you're talking like the parking spaces kind of thing, like where they came out and like set up, yeah, so that if they didn't get those as permanent modifications, then there's an expiration on the temps.
So on a follow-up on that, our town, I think it's an ordinance or ordinance resolution allows for bump outs during basically summer months like May through October. Could they submit a permanent modification of premises for those bump outs?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then our ordinance just says, okay, you got to close those bump outs during this time of year. So that would.
Yeah, if you guys,
Pay the temporary fee.
yeah, if you guys have something where you're going to restrict that, but yeah, we've seen a lot of places. Do their temps into, they're turning them into permanent now because it's worked so well for
I
them.
think that'll make it a lot easier for license holders if it's just like, yeah, your bump out is now permanently part of your license. You just got to close it down during winter months.
Yeah,
Or just be able to move it so that the plow can get through and then get it back.
so I've seen the snow piles here.
As long as you can move it for the plows. Have it.
Great.
Oh, good, I'm glad.
Thank you.
We're finally getting all on the same page. I believe Bruce has a question as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry. I have several. I know this has been a long meeting. Thank you for your time, Lisa.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll try and bust through these. I think some of them are going to be pretty quick, but I'll try and bust through these. First of all, going back to the signage issue, the no alcohol beyond this point signs, is that something that's part of the requirements along with the licenses displayed and the warnings displayed, or is that in addition to?
So that is, I guess, in addition, if somebody wants to have that, then they have that affirmative defense if somebody walks off their premise. If they don't have that sign, they don't have the defense, but it's not a requirement of an establishment to have it up.
Thank you. Understood. That is something that we, as a local authority, try and require for our special events and.
Okay,
for
yeah,
the
I mean, it's
containment.
it's not bad to
Yeah,
have.
it just makes good sense for that. And on
Yes.
the special event issue, sorry, I'm writing notes here as well. On the special event issue, what do you all, we obviously require folks with special events to provide us a diagram of the area where alcohol is going to be consumed and whatnot, and we ask them to provide egress and the manning of those entry and exit points. I think is very important. the signage we just talked about. But the question comes into play with what that barrier is. It doesn't necessarily need to be a hard orange fence or barbed wire everywhere, but I don't feel it's appropriate to just throw some cones out in a field as well. So is there any kind of guidelines from the state as far as what the barrier containing the area of consumption should be?
There's not, so that we leave that up to, the licensees. And then again, you guys are managing those special events. So if there's something you want to put into place, but basically what we say is it has to be controlled. So whether that's, you put a paint strip on the ground or you put up a 6-foot fence or, as long as you know where the line is, and then you've got to have some way to control that. We don't, mandate any specific type of, it's got to be a rope or it's got to be a fence or it's got to be concrete barriers. We don't put anything into place. We just want to see that if you gave us a diagram with just a spray painted
Understood.
line, we probably
Okay.
would say, hey, we want a little bit more in sense of control. But there's nothing specifically that we have, that we require or suggest.
Understood. Thank you. My next question involves securing products. We've had a couple of establishments over the years that have their stock of product available to be accessed during off hours. We have, a hotel with a window on Main Street where essentially a 14-year-old can walk by and see that there's a wall full of booze, try the door, and if the door is unlocked, and they have full access to that booze. We have an outdoor bar with a similar situation. Just looking for, I've encouraged those bars to have some way to secure the booze and not make it available. But looking for some guidance there as to how the state views that.
Yeah, so again, unless there's some kind of violation, there's no state statute that, it makes good sense, right? To have it in the back or to have it locked up or, something like that. But unless you actually had somebody who was underage get in control of it or someone visibly intoxicated, we don't have any requirement. I mean, I've seen alcohol stored in bathrooms and under the seats of, the bench seats of restaurants and kind of wherever people can find to put it. So we don't have any, I guess, rule or mandate on where they have to store their alcohol.
The difference being there, when a restaurant closes, it locks its door and that's no longer accessible. Whereas when a hotel
Sure.
bar closes, but the hotel front lobby is open and people can come
Open.
and go, people that don't even live in the hotel can come and go. That's my
Yeah.
gray area issue there.
Yeah, well, I think again, they would be subject to penalty if some type of violation came out of that. But as far as mandating where they, if they lock it up or put it away somewhere, there's just nothing in state statute that requires that.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
Getting through my list here. So we have a lot of folks wearing open carry firearms these days, and we've had some license holders under the impression that it would be appropriate to serve alcohol to folks that are obviously carrying firearms. It's my take on it that the statute reads that you can't serve to anyone or that you shouldn't have alcohol when under, you shouldn't have a firearm, I'm sorry, under the influence. And while there's no evidentiary standard such as for DUI, under the influence, my take is that if you're consuming alcohol, you're under the influence of it, it should not be doing so with a firearm. Does the state have a take on that?
I think, Sheriff, like you said, besides the statute of you can't be in possession of a weapon while you're under the influence of alcohol, there wouldn't be anything against, for the licensed establishments for serving or anything that I'm aware of, for serving somebody.
What about for fine?
Yeah, I was saying that would be that person's responsibility because you can't be in possession of a weapon and
Because
under the age.
you're wearing them
Oh, I mean, are they?
and they buy the alcohol.
Mhm. Yeah, if they're not under the influence of anything, there's nothing that would prohibit them from purchasing. You just can't be under the influence and in possession of a weapon. So, yeah, there wouldn't be anything prohibitive there.
Well,
You're saying
so,
there's no recourse for the establishment other than common sense to not serve someone who's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you said, it's
They-
probably
they-
not ideal or a best practice, but there's not anything that I'm aware of that says that you can't serve somebody that is, in possession of a weapon.
Understood. And one last, I'm sorry. So in order, when violations occur, citations are issued as per the statute to the owner, the manager, and the server typically. That's your understanding as well?
I'm sorry, say that again, Bruce.
So when there is a violation of a liquor statute, liquor code violation, a citation would be issued to the owner, the manager, and the server. Isn't that how you guys operate?
Yeah, I mean, if there is a rise, like I said, a lot of these things we handle administratively. We don't issue criminal citations. There are some things that we have zero tolerance on, such as serving to underage or visible intox. But yeah, the citation would go to, who committed that violation.
Understood. So I've got an instance in which we've had what we feel is a violation and attempted to serve to the manager, the owner, and the server. The manager turns out to not be listed as a manager, so we serve the owner. However, the officer at the time failed to identify the bartender, and the owner is now refusing to identify the bartender. How would you handle that situation if that were you responding to that?
What was the violation for?
Was for alcohol leaving the premises.
In the premise. And so we would probably just handle that administratively is how we would handle that. We take an administrative action, not a criminal action.
Understood. I appreciate your time, Lisa. Thank you so very much. Those are all my
Oh,
questions.
of course. All right, what else can I help? I've got to write down a few. I'm looking on the form. There was a fee discrepancy. Is that correct? Like there's things I need to remember to go.
$50 or
Yeah, the $50 additional application fee that seems to be listed in addition to like the, specific like brew pub or hotel and entertainment or hotel and restaurant license. Seems to be a discrepancy on whether or not there's.
So you're saying on the form itself?
There, it does not list the fee of $50. But we have had businesses contacted by the state licensing authority saying, hey, you still owe us that $50 fee.
Okay,
Even though they paid like their, however much to the town and 500 to the state.
500, whatever. Yeah, okay, so I'll look at that. What was the fee? And then I'm gonna look up that lodging and entertainment for you. And then the website with the current licenses. See if we can put some kind of disclaimer on there.
And could you also check for me if municipalities can set their own
Yes.
fees?
Yes. And that's for renewals or new licenses or both?
Mostly, well, both.
All right, I will look into that. And I will get back with you guys.
Because I know like, when we came to like, the town has the ability to waive the late fee if it finds it for good cause.
Yeah.
And so I've never had the licensing authority like follow up with me. It's like, hey, have they paid the local licensing fee or late fee? They've only worried about the state late fee.
Right, yeah.
So I was wondering if, the state really even really cares about the local fee as long as a local licensing authority said, yeah, they pay what we want.
We'll see. Check it out. And I'll let you know.
Great.
Well, thank you guys for having me up. I hope it was beneficial. I'll look into those things I was not very sure on, and I'll get back with you. It'll be my point of contact. I'll just get you that information. She's got my contacts. If you guys
I can pass down. I can pass it on.
directly, please feel free. It's here to help. We're always happy when we get invited to come in and, help out and do these kinds of things. And yes, we can help you in the future. Let us know, it's your special events and stuff. Get my information from Melina. We can, help you out with that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Any questions that you guys have? I know things pop up just in the course of business, so.
I can't believe corking fees are illegal in Colorado. That's why. I'm also a bartender, so that's good to know.
No, don't do it.
No one's asked, but it's good. I would have been like, oh.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for being my wingman here. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah. And we are ending this meeting.